Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're breaking down episode 6 of it. Welcome to Derry in full detail. After last week's big return of Pennywise, the dancing clown, this chapter shifts the focus to Mrs. Kirsch, her past, and her disturbing connection to her father, Bob Gray. At the same time, several characters finally get a taste of happiness and calm right before everything is set up to literally go up in flames. Enjoy these last moments of peace for some of our favorites, because this episode is clearly the setup before the fall. We're going to go through everything that happens, front to back. Full spoilers ahead. The episode kicks off in black and white with a flashback to 1935 at an asylum. We see a nurse whose identity is revealed later waking a young girl named Mabel and leading her down into the basement. Mabel is clearly scared and doesn't want to go, but the nurse keeps soothing her, promising that there's nothing to worry about. Once they reach the basement, we learn Mabel has been brought there to meet a clown. A single bright red balloon drifts into view, the only splash of color in the monochrome setting. Mabel panics and tries to flee, but the nurse keeps her in place. The balloon floats toward a doorway. A hand closes around the string, and then Pennywise slowly steps into view. This 1935 setting is important for the future. It's the time period where Season 2 will take place, and it ties directly into the Bradley Massacre, which is almost certainly going to be the big horrific centerpiece of that season. Just like the 1908 flashback in Episode 3, this opening works as a preview trailer for the violence to come and hints at characters and storylines we'll see later. I fully expect Season 2 to expand on this, especially the nurse, who we later learn is Mrs. Kirsch, and more of Mabel's backstory, including how her early encounters with it led her to the asylum so young. We then jump forward to 1962 and pick back up with our main cast. Will is getting ripped into by his father Leroy over what happened in the sewers and the death of Rousseau. Leroy has no doubt about what he saw down there. He tells Charlotte about its shape-shifting powers and how it was responsible for the deaths of the soldiers on that mission. Leroy orders Will to stay at the base and declares he's basically grounded to his room unless his father says otherwise. Will refuses. He turns Leroy's own life lesson against him, reminding him that a real man doesn't run away or hide from danger. That's when things escalate. Leroy tells Will he's not like him. Will fires back that his father is right, because Will wouldn't let his friends die, clearly calling out Leroy's role in Rousseau's death. Leroy responds by slapping Will. This becomes the breaking point in their relationship. Will tells his father that it has already gotten to him, not physically, but through fear, control, and internal conflict. Then Will gets on his bike, heads back into Derry, and chooses to stand with his new friends instead of staying under Leroy's thumb. Meanwhile, in Derry, townspeople are putting up and handing out wanted posters for Hank. You can feel the anxiety and anger tightening around the town as people grow more agitated looking for him. All of this unrest is exactly what it feeds on and nurtures, as it works toward another blood-soaked event, the tragedy at the Black Spot. Back with the kids, we see where it really wins this episode. It manages to divide the group. Lily explains to everyone what happened in the sewers when Pennywise stopped in front of her and left the mysterious weapon at her feet. After the Maddie Baton switch that Pennywise pulled, Lily is rattled to her core. You can see in her face that she's now suspicious of everyone and everything. She refuses to let Will even hold or properly examine the weapon. She keeps it on her at all times, convinced it's the only thing that can protect her from it. Driven by trauma, Lily thinks they should head straight back into the sewers and use the weapon to kill it immediately. Ronnie, acting as the cautious one, completely disagrees, reminding everyone how close they all came to dying the last time they went down there. She ends up calling Lily crazy. The second Ronnie says that Lily's grip on the weapon tightens, for a moment, it genuinely feels like she might turn the weapon on Ronnie, as if being touched by its influence has left her teetering on the edge of violence. When Mar tries to take the weapon away, Lily reacts like a dragon guarding a hoard. She backs away and clutches it even more fiercely. Lily and Ronnie then tear into each other emotionally, saying they wish they'd never met. Lily regrets helping Ronnie with her father, and Ronnie cuts deep by saying she wishes Lily had never been released from the asylum. Rich tries to step in, shouting that this is exactly what it wants to break them apart, so it can pick them off one at a time, but the emotional damage is already done. Ronnie storms off. Will goes after her. Lily leaves alone with the weapon. And Marge and Rich are left behind, trying to figure out how they can pull everyone back together. At the black spot, Dick Halloran returns. As we talked about previously, his mental lockbox of fear, trauma, and spirits has been forced back open, and now all of his visions and ghosts are spilling out again. We don't explicitly see what he's looking at first, but it's obvious Halloran senses something in the room with him and chooses to ignore it. He grabs a drink and heads toward the back to lie down, but his friends stop him to tell him there's an unexpected guest hiding in one of the beds. We'll come back to that in a moment. Out in town, Ronnie vents to Will about Lily, expecting him to side with her. As she talks, you can see that even she knows she went too far. She admits she's terrified between it, the sewers, and what's happening with her dad. She's under a ton of pressure. She and Will hug, and it looks like they're about to kiss until Charlotte shows up. Calls Will by his full name and orders both him and Ronnie into the car. Charlotte continues to be one of the strongest parents portrayed right now. Firm, protective, efficient, and loving. She doesn't waste time. Looking ahead though, we know from It Chapter 1 2017 that in the future we see older Leroy taking care of Mike Hanlon. But we never see Grandma Charlotte. That suggests that either she leaves Leroy at some point after these events, or she dies in the fallout of what's coming in these last 2 episodes. Back at the black spot, Halloran's friends take him to the back to reveal that Hank is hiding out there. They're trying to figure out a way to smuggle him out of Derry. This lines up with the idea we discussed earlier in the season. Hank's involvement is going to be the spark that sets up the black spot tragedy. Before disaster strikes, we get a short-lived moment of joy when Hank and Ronnie reunite. It's the first time they've seen each other since he was arrested, and they're ecstatic to be together again. Halloran, however, wants nothing to do with the plan. He walks out, and if we needed more foreshadowing that things won't end well, Hank promises Ronnie they'll never be separated again. Saying that in a horror story is basically asking for the exact opposite to happen. It's a huge red flag that Hank probably won't make it out of this alive, and that he and Ronnie will be separated permanently. As night falls, Marge and Rich head back to the tower and continue to bond. Rich gently helps treat Marge's injured eye, grossed out but clearly smitten. We already know Rich has a crush on her, and this quiet, intimate scene just cements that. But in Derry, affection is dangerous. The closer to characters get, the more likely it is going to weaponize that bond. While this is happening, Rich keeps testing how far his homemade plane will fly. We watch it glide through the town and then directly down into the sewers. That's some heavy foreshadowing. The plane represents Rich's innocence and his hopes. Watching it literally descend into its territory suggests that Rich himself is all but destined to fall victim to it at some point. Back at the base, Halloran is attempting to drown his visions with alcohol when Hanlon shows up. Han lets him know Shaw has ordered them to continue hunting the pillars, but Halloran is clearly dealing with something much deeper. Halloran looks toward the bathroom and sees a dead soldier standing there, half his face missing one of the men who died in the sewers. Hanlon asks what really happened down there, and Halloran finally opens up. He describes a childhood filled with death due to his shining. His grandmother told him, when he was only 9 years old, to build that mental lockbox to hide all the awful visions. He explains that he hadn't seen anything in years, not until very recently, when that lockbox was opened again. Han asks if the dead talk to him. Halloran says they don't, as long as he ignores them. But if he acknowledges them, the voices never stop. He also mentions that the dead are more aware of the unknown than the living, which gives Han an idea. As a soldier, he sees this as an opportunity to use the dead to track it. That suggestion hits a nerve. Halloran snaps, calling Hanlon out for blindly following every order from Shaw, and he screams at Han to get out. Han, being the superior officer, then threatens to have Halloran hauled away in handcuffs if he refuses to help them track down it and the pillars. At school, Lily is in class replaying her sewer encounter with Pennywise over and over again, still clinging to the weapon like it's the only thing standing between her and death. She opens her desk and sees her father inside, mocking her. She completely loses control in front of the class while we see the weapon glowing. Lily bolts from the room without permission and heads out in search of comfort from the one adult she thinks she can trust, Mrs. Kirsch. In the cafeteria, Rich tells Marge where Hank is and suggests they go see Ronnie together, hoping to convince her to rejoin the group. We get another sweet moment between Rich and Marge when Rich gives her an eye patch from his ancestors, and they jokingly call themselves the Knight and the Pirate. Then the patty cakes stroll up, asking Marge to sit with them. They mock Rich like usual. Earlier in the season, she might have gone along with them, but this time she doesn't. She drops the eye patch, shows her injured eye fully, and chooses to sit with Rich instead. No shame, no hiding. It's a big turning point for her character, and for Rich, probably the moment he falls for her even more. With that foundation set, they head to the black spot to find Ronnie and try to bring her back into the fight against it. When Ronnie opens the door at the black spot and sees Will, she smiles instantly. Then she notices the others standing behind him, and that smile vanishes just as fast. It's a small detail, but it shows how guarded she still is, and how fragile the group dynamic has become. Lily arrives at Mrs. Kirsch's house, looking for comfort. Right away, something feels off. The neighbor next door gives her a weird, unsettling smile. No one answers the front door, so Lily walks in and hears music playing upstairs, coming from the attic. Upstairs, she finds a photo album. There's a fun little Easter egg here. The teacup in the frame matches the one Mrs. Kirsch uses in It Chapter 2 in her scene with Beverly. Lily flips through photos of Mrs. Kirsch and Stan getting married, their anniversary celebrations, and younger pictures of Ingrid. Then she turns to a page that shows a younger Ingrid, dressed as a nurse. Confirming she's the same nurse from the opening scene, the one who led Mabel down to Pennywise in the basement. She turns another page and sees a young Ingrid in 1908 with Bob Gray. Lily starts noticing just how much Bob resembles Pennywise. The Pennywise revelation, Papa Bob Gray. Mrs. Kirsch walks into the attic as Lily starts crying and tells her what happened in the sewers. Lily runs into her arms, desperate for comfort. While they talk, Lily notices more photos of Bob Gray dressed as Pennywise. Mrs. Kirsch asks if Lily has seen him and begins laughing and crying with joy when she realizes Lily has brought Pennywise back. She proudly tells Lily that of course it would be her who does it. Lily then spots a Pennywise-like costume hanging in the corner, the same outfit that appeared outside Will's room in episode 4. And the one many of us suspected wasn't actually Pennywise, but Mrs. Kirsch pretending to be him. Mrs. Kirsch then lays out her past. Her father was a carnival performer who went by Pennywise the Dancing Clown. She says he was taken away from her when the carnival left town, but she stayed in Derry. We flash back to 1935 again, and watch young Ingrid at the asylum, listening in as Mabel tells a doctor that she hears Pennywise's voice. Ingrid realizes that this could be her chance to see her father again. We return to the basement sequence from the beginning of the episode, but this time we see the full version. Pennywise introduces himself to Mabel, gives her the balloon, and Ingrid calls him Papa. Pennywise's expression makes it clear he sees an opportunity to manipulate her. The decision to present the flashbacks in black and white, with only Pennywise's eyes, the balloon, and later the blood in color, really makes those elements pop. It also visually matches Ingrid's worldview, everything is dull and drained until her father, Bob Gray Pennywise, appears, and he becomes the only color in her life. Not long after, Pennywise attacks, the girls run, but Mabel trips. Ingrid makes it to a steel door, slips through, and it locks behind her. She realizes Mabel didn't make it, and can't open it again. On the other side, Pennywise kills Mabel. I do think Ingrid is genuinely upset and blames herself at first. But then she hears carnival music, and Pennywise appears in the form of Bob Gray, calling her pumpkin and telling her he's her father. He says he's missed her, and promises to explain where he's been if she just opens the door. She does, and in that moment, she fully accepts him as her father, letting it rewrite her reality. Ingrid's deal with its sacrifices for Papa. Back in the attic, we learn that Mrs. Kirsch has spent her life convincing herself she's freeing her father from the shadow called Pennywise. To do that, she's been feeding him children as sacrifices so she can keep seeing him. She explains that her father used to call her Periwinkle, and she just wants him to remember the good times they shared. She tells Lily she'd never hurt her, but she can't promise that about Lily's friends. She assumes Lily, who knows what it feels like to lose a father, will understand the necessity of sacrifice. She then invites Lily to join her and see Pennywise again. Lily refuses, cuts her hand, and runs out of the house screaming, feeling completely betrayed by someone she thought she could trust. Once again, Lily is robbed of any chance at genuine peace. Every time she reaches for comfort, Derry twists it into more trauma. This also raises questions about Mrs. Kirsch's connection to Hank. Did she see Ronnie as another pathway to Pennywise? Did she ever try to have children with Stan so she could sacrifice them as well? It feels very likely we're not done with her story, or with her relationship to it. I expect more this season and in seasons 2 and 3. And that we'll get more insight into Bob Gray too. As we move toward the end of the episode, we return to the black spot. Will fails to convince Ronnie to go back into the sewers. She refuses. Will chases after her and ends up explaining everything to Hank. Hank does what any reasonable parent would do, and says Ronnie is not going back underground. But he also notices how much Will genuinely cares about his daughter. This leads into that classic dad sizing up the potential boyfriend moment. Hank wants to understand who this kid is, and as a movie lover, the big question is, what's Will's favorite film? Over at the Falcon Tavern, a group of angry dairymen, including Stan Kirsch and Phil and Suze's father, are fuming that Hank still hasn't been found. Now that Bowers has been stripped of his role as chief, he decides to tell them exactly where Hank is hiding. While this brews, Halloran is still drinking, still trying to drown out the noise in his head, and eventually joins the men at the tavern. Back at the black spot, Rich and Mar decide to stay and soak in the atmosphere instead of leaving right away. They share an Air Force Coke, watch people dancing, and enjoy what feels like a rare pocket of joy and normalcy. Rich is invited to play with the band and has a blast performing while Marge watches, clearly proud and charmed. This entire final stretch at the black spot is a perfect illustration of that one quiet night before disaster trope. Everyone is relaxed, laughing, and for a moment, free from Derry's darkness and from it. It feels similar to scenes in other horror stories, where the characters enjoy one last party before monsters or tragedy arrive. In the final moments, we see Mrs. Kirsch putting on her old outfit, the same one we saw earlier that mimics Pennywise's appearance. She's gearing up to go find her papa, and she's almost certainly heading toward the black spot. It strongly implies she may have been part of the reason Hank was set up all along. Then the real terror arrives. Bowers and his men, now masked and armed with guns, prepare to carry out the augury and trigger one of the worst events in Derry's history. The black spot is about to be burned down by racist attackers, with many of our favorite characters trapped inside. This isn't just human hatred, it's it orchestrating everything. Hank being blamed for the kids' deaths in episode 1, his suspicious bus escape, the rising tension around town, these are all threads it has been pulling to bring us to this exact moment. This episode functions as the setup for the final 2 episodes, a brief window of love, friendship, and connection before everything comes crashing down. My favorite part of the episode is the Ingrid, Mrs. Kirsch, Bob Gray, Pennywise reveal, and the flashbacks that tie the show more deeply into this version of the lore. Right behind that are the young puppy love moments between Ronnie and Will and Marge and Rich. I also really like how the title In the Name of the Father connects to the episode's theme, broken, complicated, or haunting relationships with father figures. Ingrid and Bob Gray, Lily and the loss of her father, Will and the growing rift with Leroy, Halloran's fear and issues with his grandfather. All of these relationships echo through the episode and into the choices the characters make. That's where we'll leave this breakdown of episode 6, season 1 of it. Welcome to Derry. Now it's your turn. What did you think of this episode? What stood out the most? Which scenes hit you hardest emotionally? How do you feel about the Bob Gray Pennywise backstory? Who do you think survives the black spot? What are your predictions for the final 2 episodes? Drop your thoughts, theories, and interpretations in the comments. If you enjoyed the breakdown, hit that like button. It really helps push the video to new viewers. Share it with anyone who's into this show or loves talking Stephen King and the It universe. And if you want to stick around for more, consider subscribing.